go, I'm a bulldog.
Hello, DawgNation, and welcome back to Before the Hedges, brought to you by Kroger. I'm Kaylee Mansell with DawgNation recruiting insider Jeff Sentell. And later in the show, we do something called Mansell's Details, where we bring you the viral class plays of the week. But this is simply a play that could not wait. DawgNation, we had to show it to you right now, and that's the viral play, seriously viral, of Ousmane Kromah, the four-star running back from Lee that just committed to Georgia last week. If you haven't had the chance to see how good he is, I hope this video proves to you why he's gotten all the hype on this show.
Kaylee, a very wise man, very wise producer, said, lead with your best stuff, and this might be our best stuff. And you talked about viral. Maybe you and I need those old COVID masks to wear while we watch this highlight, Kaylee. We could run this a million times. One of the things I thought that was pretty cool about this, and it makes me think of Munson, sheer grit and pure determination. I think, let's be honest, he should have went down there right at about the 15-yard line. Interesting, when I talked to Dean Fabrizio, the head coach of Lee County, I said, Coach, this run, that has to be the best one yet. And Dean actually said, well, I don't know about that. Maybe top three. He's had some great runs, and he puts this one way up at the top. But Ousmane Kromah's career has been so good at Lee County that he can't even say definitively that that's the highlight run of this young man's career.
Yeah, you look at his stats from Friday, 13 carries for 112 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a 48-14 win over the defending state champion, Coffee County.
Yeah, let's add some context here. So Lee, including Coffee County, they'd won 21 straight heading into that game, and Lee thumped them like 48-14. And you saw what Ousmane did right there, and really thrilling player. I mean, obviously he's getting hot. Everybody knows him because he's a Georgia commit, and everybody knows him now because of, air quotes, that run. It was interesting. Another thing Fabrizio said is just really humble, kid that would do anything for his teammates. He's so humble that Ousmane tries to tell me that, you know, he's maybe just 4'7" or so, high 4'6" or so in the 40. That's humility, folks, because Fabrizio, the head coach at Lee, said, nah. He said, we've had him on catapult many, many times in his career, and he's been at 21, 22 miles per hour on catapult.
Although I think we may have led with our best, that's saying a lot because we've got a lot of good stuff in store today on Before the Hedges, brought to you by Kroger. This is today's rundown. We've got to lead with the 5-star defensive lineman, Elijah Griffin, who's finally going to make his decision on Friday at 1:20. Then our Dawg-O Meter is back, which is a new way of grading how Georgia's top recruits view them in their mind. How close are they to being a dog? More on that later. And then we will have a DawgNation conversation with the 4-star edge, Chase Linton, who's gotten a lot of love on this show lately. It is time to hear from him. But first, let's start with Elijah Griffin, the number 1 player in the state of Georgia, the number 1 defensive lineman in the class of 2025. We've got this tweet here for you. I think I'm honestly surprised that he's going to make his decision this soon. It'll be this Friday, and it'll be at 1:20. And, of course, DawgNation is going to have coverage right after his decision to let you know all of our thoughts on it. But I personally thought this decision would come a little bit later.
You know, there was a little bit of intrigue about, was he going to do it on his birthday weekend in Athens? You know, Kaylee, I'm waiting for the first time where a kid hops on his Instagram Live, maybe during Krypton Fanfare in the recruiting bleachers, maybe stands up and goes, I'm committing to all of this. Wouldn't that be so cool? It would be a signature moment. But there's Griffin right there. Obviously, big-bodied, big barrel-chested defensive lineman. Kaylee, we must point out, as neutral, objective observers of all this, that when you visit a school and then you set your announcement date for the following Friday, I don't think we need to do CSI sleuthing or CSI DawgNation with our microscopes on the trail to figure out that bodes well for the home state school right now.
Yeah, you definitely don't have to do any girl math FBI work to put the puzzle pieces together that suddenly after he visits, now he wants to make a decision. But I do feel like if you're going to be the number 1 defensive lineman in the class of 2025, there's something that you've got to bring to the table that separates you from the rest of the group. What is it about Elijah Griffin that gives him the honor of being the number 1 defensive lineman in 2025?
I think it's really just the size, ability, movement, skills you got there. Now listen, that's one of the greatest slow-mos in the history of Before the Hedges, but Elijah moves a lot quicker than that. He was in Athens, obviously, on Saturday, but he's a guy that's probably racked up about 35, 45 sacks in his high school career, but he just looks like a guy. He looks like, again, I think the big things I want DawgNation to lean in real close about this is, number one, Georgia recruited him in September. They offered him September 15th of 2020. Let's think about that for a second. Georgia had won 0 natties. Stetson Bennett had not even claimed the starting job for Georgia yet. And then this was this September of his 8th grade year when Georgia offered him. And that began a long relationship. Trey Scott has been doing the recruiting. Kirby Smart has been doing the recruiting. Glenn Schumann has been doing the recruiting. There's a consistency there. And when you recruit a guy for 4.5 years and he's the number 1 prospect in the state, and you are the Georgia Bulldogs, and you are the first team to offer, you better win that one, even in this era of NIL, which I do think Georgia and the Classic City Collective will be very competitive there.
So we got to look at this from all angles, right? Can you tell me what's the benefit of him going to Georgia and why he would, but also can you tell me why he wouldn't pick Georgia on the other hand?
Yeah, I think people want to fast forward through my answer about why he wouldn't pick Georgia, but let's look at the other two teams in the running. You've got USC, that is known to be an NIL school right now across the country, and then you've got Miami. Similar kind of description there about Miami. He has visited both of those schools. Both of those schools got official visits this summer, but he hasn't visited either school since. And yet he's visited Georgia this past weekend. You see him there. He was in Mercedes-Benz for the Clemson game. It is just the consistent pressure. And really, Elijah just feels a comfort there in Athens because not only is it home state school, not only is everybody in the Coastal Empire down in Savannah and Pooler, where everything is cooler, wants to see him in Athens, but track record, winning, development. Georgia is better than those 2 other schools in every area.
So I think the question everybody probably really wants to know is he going to be a dog? But we're going to save that for later when we do our Dawg-O-Meter. We'll have that question answered. But let's say he does end up at Georgia, who has struggled keeping the defensive line healthy this season. If he does become a dog, is this someone that could potentially have almost immediate impact?
I think you'll have to, Kaylee, and here's why. I think Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins will go to the NFL. I think Christian Miller might. We know Nazir Stackhouse will. We know Warren Brinson will. And I believe Michael Williams will also be a first-round draft pick in the NFL. Kaylee, that's like 5 of their top 7 bodies right there. The only exclusions there would be Jordan Big Baby Hall, who still hasn't played yet for Georgia this year, and then also Xavier McLeod. So you've got Griffin, just a major factor in this class. I mean, he is such a tremendous talent. So everybody in DawgNation is waiting to see what Super 11 pick Elijah Griffin is going to do. And he would be the number 1 rated player in the class, the highest rated player in the class now. Kelly, it's kind of weird. We haven't had a 5-star make a decision nationally since August the 30th.
Wow.
So this is, Jamie French was a 5-star wide receiver. So we don't get too many more of these. I think Elijah Griffin and Justice Terry are the only 2 undecided 5-stars on the board right now.
So if you want to know whether or not Jeff and I think that Elijah's going to be a dog, you're going to have to stay tuned for our Dawg-O-Meter. That's coming up in just a minute. But first, we want to remind you that here on Before the Hedges, we are brought to you by Kroger. And look, this weekend slate of college football games is absolutely insane. A lot of people aren't going to be able to make that trip to Texas, but I know a lot of you guys are going to be hosting those watch parties, so you're going to need all the snacks, all the sweets, all the drinks. Kroger's got those really good snack trays that just make it so much easier on you, ready to go. Everyone loves them, so make sure you have those and drinks for cheersing, because hopefully the dogs are going to give you a lot of reason to cheers your friends this week. You can always visit online at Kroger.com or your local Kroger to grab all the stuff you're going to need for all those amazing watch parties I know y'all are going to have for Georgia, Texas. We promised you guys it's time. It's our time for our grading scale to figure out the visitors at Mississippi State versus Georgia. Where do they stand? This is Dawg-O-Meter. A few you missed it last week, walk us through the grading scale, Jeff. What's it mean?
Yeah, it's not quite our crystal balls or our kind of hybrid of that. What it is we want to measure the bounce, the juice coming off these visits. These visits are supposed to be impactful. These visits are supposed to matter. So what we do is after every visit weekend, we're not going to break this out every week, but this is going to be part of our bag. We'll dip it out after some big visit weekends. And Mississippi State offered us the occasion to kind of read the green for all you golf fans out there, or just kind of do a temperature check and a heat check about where things are trending with the dogs and these top prospects and top targets after a big visit.
Yeah, so I think we can say that Chihuahua is about 25% or less. I'm still not entirely sure what this one is. Schnauzer, is that what you call it?
Schnauzer, I think so.
Schnauzer, I'm going to call that in the 50-50 range. Then we've got our Lab/Golden Retriever. I'm going to put that at 75%. And then we've got our very own DawgNation Bulldog, which I would lean towards. It looks good, sounds good. If it looks like a bulldog, it might be a bulldog, you know?
Yeah.
We've got 4 on hand this week, starting with Vance Spafford, the 4-star wide receiver in the class of 2026. It's Spafford, not Stafford. It's a P, not a T, out of Mission Viejo, California. Undecided. Let's see where he stands. I mean, doesn't the suspense just kill you? He might be a dog. It looks like a bulldog, Jeff. This is someone who's kind of just like recently popped up on the radar. What was it about the visit that he took last week that gave him that crystal ball Georgia?
Well, you know, it's kind of crazy, Kaylee, because Spafford is one of those whoa guys I had for this past visit weekend because, number one, nobody can guard this guy. He's a 10.6'7" in the 100 meters. He's a 4.35 in the 40. He was the fastest man at the Under Armour Future 50 Challenge, where all the fastest rising junior skills went to compete for Under Armour at IMG Academy. He also had like 24 touchdowns last year. He's already got 14 this year. The guy's blocked 2 punts. He told me coming into the visit weekend that he is leaving California. He wants to experience something new. So he's getting way away from USC and Oregon in the left coast and everything else. And he told me, matter of factly, he said, you know, this visit goes well because he said Georgia was heating him up. Georgia was recruiting him hard. He was getting a lot of attention, maybe more attention than anybody from Georgia. And to him, that was surprising, but also very much welcomed. And he said a great visit puts Georgia way out in front of everybody else. And he had a great visit, Kaylee. And how do we know he had a great visit? Because he said Georgia is his leader. But this is what else he did. He takes his unofficial visit. Remember, he's a 2026. Let's make this clear. He's a 2026, but he takes his unofficial visit to Athens, his first visit ever, Kaylee. And he decides, well, I think I need to go ahead and drop my top 8. He drops his top 8 this weekend. You know what that means? That means is that the young man's like, well, let's go ahead and get this thing down the road. I don't know if it's a matter of sooner rather than later that Vance Spafford, from what it sounds like right now, could be a part of the Georgia class. Now, he does everything in his life very fast, so he might be a kid that waits until January or February. But right now, that Dawg-O Meter is where it should be.
I find it maybe a little bit coincidental that he saw those Georgia gas prices this week and was like, yeah. Get me out of California. Now, before we have time to respond to that, we're going to move on to the next one. This is going to be the 4-star edge, Chase Linton, 2025, out of Atlanta, Georgia. Former Rutgers commit, undecided at the moment. We're actually going to hear from him in just a little bit, so you're going to want to stay tuned for that. Let's see where Chase Linton falls on the Dawg-O Meter. All right. We've got him at our 75%. Lab, German Shepherd kind of area, Golden Retriever, not German Shepherd. I'm a cat person. I don't know dogs that well, obviously, but I do know that seems like a pretty good ranking. What is it about Georgia? Like, what are they going to have to do to get him from where he's at now to full-on dog?
I think what Chase needs to see is just to kind of visit a couple more schools. He's got Georgia Tech lined up this weekend for an official visit. Will he go back to Florida State? He told me he wants to see LSU as well. He said Rutgers, credit to this young man, is still in it. But he told me before the visit, Kaylee, that he wanted to make his decision by the end of November. Little sneak preview trailer of our DawgNation conversation with Chase Linton. As he told me, he's like, I don't think I can wait that long. He doesn't think he will take it all the way to the end of November. He wants to kind of eventually when he's went through his process, make it a little bit sooner than that. I saw Chase Linton play Friday night, and he had 2 sacks. He looked very good. 6'4", about 230. I tell you what, let me be a little crystal clear here, a little bit more. Kaylee, if we had something in between the lab and the dog, I probably would move it even closer to that red zone right there for things with Georgia.
Well, hopefully we'll get a good vibe off of him when we see him in his DawgNation conversation here soon. All right, let's go to our next one. This is UGA Kromah. He's going to be a 3-star linebacker in 2025. Marietta, Georgia. Still a UNC commit, but he's made quite a few visits to Georgia. Let's see where he's at. In the same spot as Chase Linton, our lab golden retriever area, which I believe is up from what he has been in the past.
Yeah, so now listen, Kaylee, been doing this recruiting game for a while. One of the things we like to say, if we had like a commandments of following college football recruiting, one of the tried and true, it's kind of an Old Testament type staple, is it's called follow the visits. Well, not only are we following the Anthony Kromah visits, we're following the back-to-back visits to the in-state school when you're not committed to them. And I think, Kromah told me last weekend he was going to try to be in North Carolina and just get a good feel of things as that program has kind of taken on a lot of water. And it lost its 4th straight game last weekend at home to Georgia Tech. And instead of seeing that, he saw Georgia against Mississippi State, Kaylee, and he said the vibe, the energy, the juice was even better, a much better visit. And then also something to tuck away, he's already told me that he's planning to come back to Georgia for the Tennessee game. Another one, and he wants to bring mom along too. I don't know what else I can say other than that's trending pretty stoutly for the Home State Bulldogs.
Follow the visits. He definitely likes what he sees. If you're bringing mama along, that tells me everything I need to know. All right, last one. It's going to be Elijah Griffin, 5-star defensive lineman, 2025, Savannah, Georgia. Not committed, but that's going to change on Friday. This is the big one. Is Elijah Griffin a dog yet? Let's see. All right, Jeff, we've got him trending dog all the way. I think it goes back to what you said. When you visit Georgia on Saturday, then all of a sudden you're like, yep, I'm ready to make my decision. I definitely think that puts you in full-on Bulldog category. And
you know what, Kaylee? I know, like football coaches, when you got a good rep, and I know you got a better rep in you. I think you got a better rep for that Dawg-O-Meter, that dog. I mean, because I think you need to break out that bass in your voice, or you need to break out as much decibels as you can. But Kaylee, we probably could have tracked the Dawg-O-Meter on him after his freshman season, his 8th grade season, his sophomore season, his junior season, and even right now. And I think all these would kind of point to dog. I think this is absolutely recruitment that Georgia needs to win and is poised to win on Friday. All right, DawgNation, I want to remind you guys that even if you can't watch us here on any of our DawgNation platforms on video, you can still take us with you on the road on any of our DawgNation podcast feed channels, whether that's Spotify, Apple, wherever you listen to. Make sure you listen with us and to us on the road on our DawgNation podcast feed. All right, it's time for a little DawgNation conversation. You mentioned that you visited and you watched the 4-star edge, Chase Linton, out of North Atlanta, and now he's suddenly kind of creeping towards Bulldog on that Dawg-O Meter. I want to hear what Chase Linton has to say here on Before the Hedges, brought to you by Kroger.
Easy question. Thoughts, feedback, what's the feeling after you finished your OB last night?
I'm not gonna lie. That it just boosts UGA on that list of mine. It's there, but not really there, if that makes sense.
You mean like a private list, like you got kind of in the back of your pocket or something like that, internally?
I would say like a private list, but it's like, so I'm trying to rank these, like the people I'm really considering over these visits, and that visit puts them high on the list.
You mentioned, I guess it was Friday night, that you wanted to see how Georgia checked the box for your major. Did you get that question answered? How does that work?
Yeah. They have my major. The business school is awesome. And I was able to talk to my player host, Damon. He was awesome. He told me all the insights and like the real stuff that was going on. So that was dope.
David Wilson was your host?
Oh, yeah, Damon Wilson. Yep, number 10.
Yeah, number 10, big edge. You know, Chase, it's always smart to just find those players and get the real, you know, the guys that are playing, the guys that had to wait to play, the guys that aren't playing. Like, what sort of feedback did you get from Damon and the Georgia players about the program?
I got that, you know, at Georgia, they take things seriously. Like, Damon's serious about this football stuff. Like, it's not a joke to him. Yeah, and I can appreciate being around someone like that because I'm not around everyone like that. And it gets on my nerves sometimes. And he and I have that in common. And I thought that was pretty cool.
Well, how about this? The official, what was your favorite part? What was the part that kept you awake?
Let's see, my favorite?
Mm-hmm.
Probably the coach meeting with Coach Deribe and the DC. You know, Deribe is always a good guy to be around. He's great energy. DC, you know, he's like very direct about that program and what they can do for you and how they develop you.
Did you get a chance? I think it's either at the end of your visit or near the end of your visit. It's either Kirby Smart's house or Kirby Smart's office. Did you get to sit down with the Godfather? I mean, what was that session like with Kirby Smart there?
So we actually talked to him when we first got there for the game. You know, he was just talking about his program, how I fit, and what matters to him. Like he you know, football is great and all that, but he's trying to get you right for, you know, when football ends, because it's going to end at some point. So he's trying to make sure his guys know what to do when that day comes. And I thought, you know, that's really respectable.
Do you feel like Georgia fits you, Chase?
Yeah. Say that.
Is it the football box? Is it the life after football box? Is it while you're there, grow you as a man box? Like, which one do you think? Do you think it's all this?
Yeah, I'd say it fits all the boxes, but they're not the only school that I think fits all the boxes.
Mm-hmm. What was the message? You know, obviously you want to hear, this is why we want you, this is how we'll use you, this is how you'll develop here. How did Georgia, what was the feedback you got from Georgia about those topics?
They showed me why they needed me. They showed me how I would be used, and they you know, put my film side by side to one of their better guys that's playing around, that's about to leave to go to the league. And they you know, talk about how they developed him, how he looked when he first came in, you know, how they can turn you into something great and maximize your potential. So I got a whole presentation on that, which I enjoyed.
Was that Jalen or was that Michael? Number 11 or number 13?
Yeah, I think it was number 11, and then they showed me some other guys. I think his name was Aziz something.
Aziz Ojulari.
Yes, Aziz Ojulari.
Yeah, they used to call him the disease, because once disease gets a hold of you, you can't shake it.
I like that.
Chase, what's it going to look like for you? Are you still taking the Georgia Tech visit? What other schools? I know you told me LSU, FSU are still in it. What does the next month look like as you try to figure this out by the end of November?
I'll just be taking official visits, wrapping my head together, and then I'll probably make a decision probably earlier than the end of November, if I'm being honest with you.
Really?
Yeah.
Is it almost so you don't want the brain overload? You just want to get it figured out?
Yeah.
Okay, so I have to say, I think my favorite part of this entire conversation is when he was talking about how Georgia would see him fitting in. So they showed him film of Aziz Ojulari and Jalen Walker. Like, what a way to show player development and give them exact proof of this is how you're going to fit in, this is what we're going to do with you.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a spot-on player parallel. Now, I think Aziz, and folks, let's remind ourselves on Aziz here. as great as Nolan Smith was, as great as a lot of Georgia's pass rushers have been, I think Azeez is the best pass rusher of the Kirby Smart era in Athens, especially coming off the edge. I mean, he was literally the difference in 2 or 3 wins for them in that 2020 season. Now he's a second-round pick for the New York Giants. He had back-to-back sacks, unfortunately, against the Marius Mims last week in the NFL in that Sunday league. But I think it's not an exact player parallel because I think Azeez was a little bit stronger. He was setting like weight room records at Marietta High. But I also say that Chase Linton's a couple of inches taller. He's 6'4", and he's about 230. And he's very charismatic. He's got a good family. I've been around his family a little bit, and this is the type of recruit that I want to say he might need 1.5 years. Weight room, get it all dialed in. Remember, he's still a top 300 overall prospect, even though he was at one time committed to Rutgers. So his stock has really shot up during his senior year. But he's the type of guy I can see playing maybe late into his second season at Georgia and helping the program out a lot. Do
you think having the 5-star edge, Isaiah Gibson, scares him away at all, or do you think he embraces that competition?
I don't think he does at all. I think Georgia has kind of used the Jalen Walker template for him again. And Jalen will play here, he'll play all over the place, he'll rush at some point. And I mean, let's face it, I think Isaiah is like 6'4.5", 260, 270 right now. I think Isaiah can kind of come in and even play a true defensive end in some packages, and when Georgia could put another guy off to the edge or beside Isaiah Gibson, or maybe coming across from the other side of the front, I think that would bode well for creating havoc for Georgia's defenses to come.
So he did his Georgia visit, but now he's got a visit to Georgia Tech this weekend. Does that say anything to you, or do you think that this timeline is going to come to a conclusion and he's ultimately going to make that decision?
I think he told me he wants to see LSU, and then he might go back and see maybe Florida State again, and there's always that. He's got that loyalty factor there with Rutgers. But, Kaylee, let's remind ourselves one thing here I think is really interesting. He wants to take an official visit to Georgia Tech this weekend. Now, what's Georgia Tech doing this weekend?
Hosting Notre Dame in Mercedes-Benz Stadium.
Mercedes-Benz Stadium.
Ding, ding, ding.
Yeah,
do I get a point?
Yeah, you do. But I think Georgia Tech might lose a point. They're going to get a lot of revenue from that. But you got an official visit, and you're not even in your own stadium. You're going to Mercedes-Benz. So I think probably not going to simulate what his Saturday nights in the fall would look like. But he did say this: Georgia Tech has really came on and recruited him hard since he kind of exploded in the summer right before his senior year.
So in just a minute, we're going to take a look at some of the highlights from the 2025 and 2026 commits. But first, this time next week, we're going to be hitting the lanes. Mark Richt at the Chick-fil-A Dog Bowl. Here is more on the Dog Bowl.
This is the UGA football family coming together to answer the call for Coach Mark Richt.
Take a bite out of Parkinson's and Crohn's.
It's the Chick-fil-A Dog Bowl, benefiting UGA's Isaacson Center, which specializes in finding a cure for Parkinson's and Crohn's disease.
Coach Rick reached out and asked. I was all in.
He's special. He's unique. He's a father figure to me.
Donate now at ricksdogbowl.com. That's ricksdogbowl.com. And join us on DawgNation and YouTube.
6 p.m., DawgNation is going to start streaming it live. They have a YouTube page, and they have DawgNation.com.
Tune into it, watch it, but support it. Donate, give.
So we're going to be live from Dog Bowl, but don't fret. We're also still going to have an episode of Before the Hedges brought to you by Kroger. Hannah Montana, best of both worlds, you know?
I think so. You'll have all your recruiting, and you'll have all your dogs bowling, and somebody's going to walk away with that heavyweight belt that Warren Brinson, I believe, won a year ago.
It was. Only time will tell, Jeff. Let's go ahead and let's get some Mansell's details in here. We've got some, these viral class plays, the highlights are getting so much more difficult each week to pick because these guys are really bringing it. But let's start here because I was at this game. I saw Ethan Barbour's performance against Gainesville. Not an easy place to play, but let me tell you, he sure did make it look easy. He had 5 catches for 140 yards and 2 touchdowns and a big win over their new in-region rival, Gainesville.
Kaylee, we're going to call them the deets when we want to sound cool, and the deets on Barbour are simply this. When Milton plays a big game, he shows up in said big game.
Yeah.
And he is the dog of the Milton High Eagles. Again, I'm going to use a term. I love this term. I'm going to clean it up because this is a family show, but someone said, you know what Ethan Barbour's real position is on our football team? It's the butt kicker. And they didn't say but we're saying this for our wholesome audience. Because what he does is when you have a matchup you need to win, you line Ethan Barbour across from that matchup you need to win, and he's going to do it. He's going to kick that other guy's tail.
I think it says a lot, too, that when Milton was going for their first touchdown, they were like, let's give the ball to Ethan Barbour. He is a sure thing for this Eagles team who performed incredibly well against a really tough Gainesville team last Friday night. Let's go to our next one. The wide receiver, Talent Taylor, 5 catches for 160 yards in a 28-24 win. He just continues to bring us plays like this that are so impressive and make you so hopeful for this Georgia wide receiver room.
He's got, he didn't make 3 in a row, Kaylee, but I think he won 2 in a row earlier this year on Dogs of the Week. And again, he's not only putting up stats, he's doing it for an unbeaten Geneva High team right there. Wants to wear number 1 in Athens, wants to really ball out. Really, really loves the Dogs. This is a guy that came into high school in the 9th grade. Loving that G, loving the red and black, and I think that's one of the reasons why Georgia was able to win this recruitment, along with the steadfast recruiting pitch and diligence of James Coley.
Why don't we just keep it going with the pass catchers here? This one's going to come from the tight end, Elias Williams. I mean, a monster. It says it right there on the tweet. 6'7". He can jump and get the ball. He had 5 catches for 72 yards and 2 touchdowns. I can't even imagine how good of a basketball player he must be either.
So it was All-State the last 3 years in basketball, Kaylee. And I want to tell you, I'm in a lot of text message threads with coaches and scouts and, coaches at the next level. And I want to tell you that the growing novelty here is like, you know what? Georgia's got a ton of tight ends. They'll have Riddell next year. They'll have Lawson Lucky next year. They might have Delp next year. There's a temptation here to think about what can Elias be if you just left him outside or got him some run outside. I don't know if he's going to grow. Maybe he grows to be a 250, 260-pound monster like Darnell Washington does, but I don't know. I think Elias is a little more fluid, and I think, adding him to the arsenal next year for Georgia's quarterback, it's going to be a fun issue for the Georgia's play callers to kind of figure out how you get this young man the ball and Talent Taylor the ball and Ethan Barbour the ball as well.
Yeah, between him and Ethan Barbour, keeping tight end you and Todd Hurley alive, those two together, it's going to be dynamic. All right, let's take a look at our next one. This comes from the 5-star quarterback Jared Curtis, who's in the 2026 class. I think a lot of people are calling for a quarterback that can not only throw the ball but also scramble, and I think that's what Jared Curtis does so well. Is he's just as good on the ground as he is in the air.
Kaylee, I'll just say this: great googly moogly. You've got this guy right here, and he's about 6'3", 6'4", 220, and he can certainly, he's going to make plays with his legs, and I don't think not just extend plays, but everybody says it, Kaylee, and it sounds so far-fetched, but every week we watch Jared Curtis, still just a junior. Yeah, of course, this level here is not great, but it's probably similar to what Arch Manning did, maybe a little better than what Arch Manning played against in Louisiana. But this guy right here, he brings out the Josh Allen comps. And wait till you see this other play, and you're going to be like, you know what? I don't feel bad about dropping a player parallel for Josh Allen when you see what he can do with his legs here, and then in this next clip, what he can do with his arm.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and show that clip. But first, before we get into this, I do want to say I love that he's not afraid to run over anyone. Like, he's not trying to do the whole slide thing, like head to head. But here we also have what he can do in the air, just continuing to put up these big numbers for Nashville Christian. And I'm just excited for him to finally be here.
Dot, dime, whatever you want to do it. Now, first of all, Kaylee, he throws this like, you're maybe throwing your aluminum can into the recycling center here at Cox headquarters. But look at that, the easy throw, the accurate throw right there. And I mean, he has got it going on. I think the numbers I have for him, Kaylee, then you're going to love this: 18 touchdown passes for the year and 11 rushing scores for the year. And this is a 5-star quarterback as well.
All right, well, when you look at the plays like this, I mean, it's inevitable that Jared Curtis was finally going to be Dawg of the Week.
I'm a big dog, no leash.
had the season stats. Let me show you his stats from last Friday night. 27 for 37 for 370 yards in the air, 2 touchdowns, 8 carries for 78 yards, 3 touchdowns, 5 total touchdowns on the night. That gives him 18 passing touchdowns and 11 rushing touchdowns on the season. Oh my gosh.
Kaylee, I'm not a math guy, but I can do this math. He has 5 touchdowns last week. He has approximately 30, let's call it 29 and be so accurate here, on the year. And he's played 7 games. So he's averaging, really, this is his average night, about 4.5, 5 touchdowns a game for everything. And Kaylee, you guys should be gleefully happy here. I'm going to tell you one other thing. This guy is country. This guy was raised in the woods. He's a man of the woods. He's tough. He's durable. He's been around four-wheelers, fishing his entire life. There's a story about a zip line I'm going to tell you good folks one time soon about this young man in a zip line that you're going to love to hear. I'm going to talk about this guy is tough, and he is our dog of the week. And I got to say one more thing, Kaylee. Shout out to these highlights.
For real.
I mean, folks, we already showed you Ousmane Kromah at the beginning of the show. We showed it about 6 times. We can keep showing it for all I care, but these highlights were so good that this little 4-pack you just saw right here didn't even include Kromah's run for Lee County.
And Jared Curtis, you are our dog of the week. All right, it is that time in the show where we do our question of the week as well as a 2025 class breakdown. Remind you who's on the offense, who's on the defense, and where things stand with Georgia's current top targets. But it's time for our question of the week. I love this question. I'm so excited to participate in this question, and that's, will we finally see a lot of former 5-star Ellis Robinson on Saturday? I mean, I've been sitting this whole time wondering, where's he at? And finally, we get to see a little bit of him against Mississippi State. You say you're not a math guy. I'm not a math girl either, but it didn't take much for me to realize that a certain cornerback on the Dogs team did not play that great. And, I mean, at that point, what are you going to lose by putting Ellis Robinson in there? I hope that we see more of Ellis Robinson this Saturday.
Kaylee, you said it right there. It intrigued me. What are you going to lose? I think it's going to be, what are you going to win? You're going to go win a game in Texas. Kaylee, I am of the belief, I hold this truth to be self-evident, that Ellis Robinson could have been making the same impact on this Georgia 2024 football defense that KJ Bolden has already made. Mm-hmm. I just think KJ didn't have as many veterans in front of him. And here's what I see, Kaylee. I don't want to call out names, but if you have juniors making mistakes at cornerback, might as well throw the freshman in there. That's probably the team's best pure cover corner. I've been hearing whispers around Athens for the last month or so that Ellis was coming on. They were going to try and get Ellis ready for November. And obviously the guys in front of him, they're not playing up to the Georgia standard or as well as they could possibly play. And I think Texas is going to flood the field with receivers, and I think Ellis can cover those receivers. I think he has got a very bright future. And again, folks, he didn't get bad. He didn't regress, or he didn't, struggle in Athens. It's just the fact that Daniel Harris, so good, somebody pulled him out of the portal. Julian Humphrey, so good, somebody just almost pulled him out of the portal. You've got Dalen Everett, who is a multi-year starter now. He started a lot of ball for Georgia last year, and he is a former 5-star in his 3rd season in Athens. It's not supposed to be easy for you to jump over those crazy physical specimens. I mean, really, Harris and Humphrey are prototype NFL first-round, second-round picks that Ellis Robinson has had to battle. But I do, DawgNation, if you want to have a reason to crack open a beverage tonight or look forward to something in Austin when it's going to be about 85 degrees at game time or during the day in Austin on Saturday, I think Ellis Robinson is going to play and going to get his most run as a Georgia Bulldog. And also, if you're paying attention to Kirby Smart's press conferences after the Mississippi State game and then this week as well, you're hearing a lot more of hinting, foreshadowing that Ellis Island might show up in Texas.
Yeah, I really hope that by the time that we film this next week, we're going to be talking about the breakout performance that Ellis Robinson had at Texas. All right, let's go ahead and do our class breakdown. We'll start with the offense on 2025. No changes, but just a reminder that from now on, when a player is listed in yellow, it's because they have reopened their recruitment. Still committed, but just yellow to represent. You got to be a little cautious on there. Thomas Blackshear, the 4-star wide receiver, has opened up his recruitment again, and we'll continue to give you more details on that as we learn more. Still the same, 1 5-star, 11 4-stars, and 1 3-star. Let's move to the defensive side of the ball. No changes, but the 3-star defensive lineman, Stephon Shivers, has also reopened his recruitment again. As we learn more information on this, we will continue to update about the soap opera that has continued within the 2025 class. 2 5-stars, 5 4-stars, and then we have our 2025 recruiting snapshot right now. That class rank nationally is at number 5. If Elijah Griffin were to commit to the Dogs, do they potentially go up, Jeff?
They go to 3rd.
Really?
They jump Auburn and LSU, so that's something to think about there as well.
Poor Hugh Freeze.
Uh,
Winning on the recruiting trail, maybe not on the football field. It'd be a bad, bad day for the Tigers. All right, let's take a look at our top targets. No major changes this week. Some people did come off the list and go back to just on the list, but everyone was here. We've talked a lot about A.J. Kromah from Marietta.
Let me talk about this. I'm going to see if I can get Kaylee's a big eyebrow raise with this topic. Let's talk about people that are not here.
Ooh.
We have moved. The Before the Hedges staff has moved C.J. Wiley out of top targets. He goes to just off the list. Kaylee, I don't think he's going to wind up a Georgia Bulldog. I just don't know if he'll ever even get back into the top targets. I just don't know if that recruitment, him and Georgia, CJ and Georgia, I just don't know if it's going to work out.
When we get to just off the list, I do have a story I would like to share from my experience Friday night. Let's go ahead and look at our other page. No changes. Elijah Griffin still number 1 on that list. Justice Terry, who will be visiting Texas this weekend to watch Texas and Georgia. And then we had the DawgNation conversation with Chase Linton. Let's go ahead and get to our just off the list, because as Jeff mentioned, there are some guys, including the one at the top, who have come off that top targets, and now they're just on the list.
Yeah. I mean, Demola right here, he just visited South Carolina, so there's getting some good traction on that. One thing South Carolina is doing with its efforts, with its collectives, is they are very interested in offensive linemen, high-grade SEC potential offensive linemen. Looking at that list, Lagonza Hayward, he's going to be back at Tennessee for the Alabama game this weekend. One name I just want to kind of flip back to, if we can, in the top targets, Rayshawn Dinkins, the All-State safety out of Warner Robins. He was in Athens on Saturday for the Georgia game, and I would say things are trending, and the trends are trending right there. I love this guy's game. If Georgia gets him, my middle Georgia sources have approved me, and they said it would not be reckless, it would not be heresy for me to include Rayshawn Dinkins and include the name Javon Bullard as a type of player parallel, player impact that he could be in Athens. I know we love to go forward on Before the Hedges, but I wanted to make sure we talked about my man Rayshawn there.
All right, let's go to our last pages of just off the list. New name added this week. Anthony Turbo Rogers, 4-star running back, Montgomery, Alabama. What's the deal?
So he's committed to Alabama. He just took his official visit to Georgia. And Georgia, I think, kind of moved the dial with him a little bit. It's Alabama, it's Georgia, or it's Ohio State. Georgia was his first offer, Kaylee, many moons ago. And he's always felt the consistent love from Georgia. He told me Georgia can get him where he wants to go with his college dreams and making it to the NFL. And he said he came away from Athens, came away from Georgia, feeling a little bit better. Georgia could feel a little bit better about its chances there with Turbo. Now, let's be clear, he's still in just off the list. He's not in the top targets. He had been in just off the list off and on a lot this cycle, and now I think there's enough there to kind of put him back on.
All right, as Jeff mentioned, C.J. Wiley is now back on just off the list. I had the chance to see C.J. Wiley in Milton versus Gainesville. Mike Norvell was on the scene, was watching his every move. Mike Norvell was as close to me as you are now, and seems like a nice guy, but I did find it a little bit interesting that he flew the helicopter in on the baseball field, and he left as they were announcing the homecoming queen.
Oh, my.
I know.
He didn't mess up anybody's hair with flying over or anything, did he?
I just thought, I was like, this could be the biggest moment of this girl's life at this point in time, and we're going to be distracted by Mike Norvell's helicopter leaving?
Oh, wow. He's not done it. He's not gotten a lot of W's this season.
No.
And, Kaylee spilling a little tea right there.
I had to. I just thought those are the kind of things that I noticed, and if I was that girl, I would be upset. That's all I'm saying.
What if she was a Florida State fan? Would it matter?
Ooh. I mean, either way. Like, that's a really big moment for someone, and you took away that moment. Wow. But anyway, that's my tea.
Hold on. Do we blame Mike Norvell or we name the helicopter pilot?
Both. Somebody should have said no. Let's let this girl have her moment, but no. You got to steal the show. Anyway, I'm not saying I have any personal issues with Mike Norvell. That was my instant observation, apart from the fact that Milton is pretty dang good. All right, let's get some Sentelligence before we end the show. Some final thoughts, whether it's what we just talked about throughout the show, about what's coming for Georgia, Texas, or even your opinion on Mike Norvell leaving with homecoming queen was being announced.
I tell you what, first of all, let's do a quick review. Number one, you can only get that sort of analysis from Kaylee Mansell and Mansell's details here on Before the Hedges. I also have to sit there, and I think you did some of your best dogs ever this week. We're going in the film room. We got instant reaction. You know how Kirby usually says, I need to watch the film and make my decision for sure. I think Kaylee had her best dogs of the week so far this season, so you guys got to treat to that. And folks, I'm going to tell you, Ousmane Kromah, wow. That's all I got to say about that. Wow. If I had some popcorn, I'd be eating that popcorn, and I'd be watching that thing over and over. You know what I'm going to do when we go back and we watch this Before the Hedges again, because we do like to watch the film after every performance. Mm-hmm. I'm going to rewind that Ousmane Kromah run, because I've already watched that thing I've watched it about 18 times, Kaylee. How many times have you watched it?
I would like it injected into my veins.
Dogs are going to be good in the backfield, folks, clearly.
All right, it looks like Jeff Sentell's confidence scale looks pretty good for this Saturday. So with that, make sure you tune in next week. Watch the Dog Bowl, and then also watch next week's episode of Before the Hedges. The Dogs have a big one this Saturday. Hopefully we'll have good things to say about it this time next week. Thank you for joining us here on Before the Hedges, brought to you by Kroger. We'll check back in with you next week.
The way they handle business, education is important, trying to reach the next level. I want the best in life.